The security of the nation of Israel largely rests on the shoulders of teenagers who risk their lives day in and day out right after high school graduation to defend this country. It is an awesome responsibility. While American 18-year-olds are often busy partying in frat houses, Israeli teens are conscripted into the military. They go through basic training. And yet for their service, for this forced temporary vocation, most IDF rank-and-file soldiers earn monthly stipends that are far lower than minimum wage even. And IDF soldiers haven't gotten any kind of pay boost in over 5 years. The pocket money that they do get from the government is low, and amid growing outrage, the government is now set to boost the salary of soldiers beginning in January by 50%. Minimum wage, by the way, for professional jobs in Israel is over $1,700 a month. With this new raise, conscripted combat support soldiers will get about $580 a month. Frontline combat soldiers will get just under $1,000 a month. With us now to talk more about this, I have Paul Gendrop, a former lone soldier discharged 2 years ago and now an activist and volunteer with current soldiers, many of them struggling to make ends meet once they get off base. Also with Paul here in studio is Nili Erlich, a former IDF soldier in an elite intelligence unit, just released a few months ago from the IDF, now part of the I-24 News family with us here in the booking department. Nili, I want to start with you. A bit of a role reversal here. Normally this is your job to convince nervous, reluctant guests to come onto my show and talk with me. Now I spend a part of the day convincing you, nervous and reluctant, to come on the show, but thank you so much for being willing to do it. You were released from the IDF about a year ago. The money that you get from the IDF for the service every month, how far does that get you? How much can you get with this money?
Well, it doesn't get you very far at all. I personally didn't see any point in trying to save up any money. I was lucky enough to have the support of my parents so that they bought me anything I needed while I was home. But besides that, if I wanted to buy anything for myself, anything for shoes or my hobbies, I'd have to spend it all over my own personal money that I saved up before my service, because the 700 shekels we got couldn't cover it all. So I had no choice, and I ended up without getting any money out of the Army.
Yeah, I mean, it's about 700 shekels. We're talking $200, $250 that you're getting. If you doesn't cover rent, it doesn't cover a lot of meals off base.
I was lucky enough to have my parents pay for the rent, for foods, for the meals I had in the weekend, but nothing besides that. I couldn't afford to buy anything, and if I was a civilian, I could have bought things on my own expenses.
Yeah.
It makes you have to ask for your parents to buy you things while you're an adult. Yeah. And you don't want to do that.
And you and your friends in the IDF, in your unit, I mean, did you joke about this money? I mean, you couldn't plan even a big dinner really with this money that you would get as a stipend.
Yeah.
What did you guys talk about when it came to the allowance you were getting from the government?
So we'd always just joke about just hanging out in people's houses because we couldn't afford going out too much. If we do that, we just have to spend the money we saved up before the service, because that was just pocket money, as you said earlier. We were just happy that we didn't have to buy things on our own expenses. Me and my friends were lucky enough not to be lone soldiers, but I don't know how they can handle it.
Yeah, a lot of people struggling without a family support network or a socioeconomic position to be okay out of the Army base. Paul, I want to ask you about, just certainly not saying here that soldiers don't deserve a pay raise, but I just want to ask about the reality. The soldiers, they are getting food, they are getting housing, they're getting clean bed sheets to sleep on, they have a base, many of them, depending on their unit. I mean, and this is a temporary vocation. The government is giving money. I mean, so all in all, is it really that bad, considering the extras that you get?
Well, first things first, Jeff, thank you for having me here. Second of all, I think that it's not that it's really that bad, right? At the end of the day, you do get a lot of things from the Army, and especially if you're a soldier that is either combat support, and you're spending 14, 21 days out of the month on base and just coming out on weekends to spend it at home for 2 or 3 days, right? Now, the biggest problem that I see and that I personally lived through was being a soldier that was in combat, support. I didn't live on base. I had to pay for rent for myself. Got a stipend of 1,300 shekels and another 900 shekels as my regular salary, you could call it. Now, rent in Israel is pretty high, right? And 1,300 shekels can't get you much. Now, based on, having a 1,500 shekel rent or a 2,000 shekel rent, then the rest of the money you have, if you're coming home every day, right, you're having breakfast at home and having dinner at home and paying for gas and electricity and all those extra things that come with just being alive in this country, it starts becoming a little bit heavy financially, especially if you don't have someone to support you.
Yeah, I know Nili mentioning, she had family to come home to and to help out. Many soldiers have that support network. Many soldiers don't. And I know, Paul, that you are now working and volunteering, helping many soldiers, also former lone soldiers who don't, have that network and are struggling to make ends meet. Their stories, what are they telling you?
Correct. So what we do, right, I volunteer in an organization that helps lone soldiers especially. And what we do is we give them food. We give them food every Friday. They're welcome to come to the Merkaz HaKongresim in Haifa from 10 in the morning till about 3 in the afternoon. And they live with, several boxes of pre-made food that we get from donations. At the end of the day, living in Israel and having just that very small stipend, it's sometimes not enough.
Yeah. By any objective measure, the money quite low. And there's a 50% pay raise set to go into effect in just a few weeks. How much more will that carry some of these soldiers, do you think, Paul?
I think it will definitely be a big factor in carrying the lone soldier, especially when it comes to just having a better life outside of the army, right? When it comes to being able to afford a lot more food or just nicer products at the end of the day, right? I don't think that soldiers should be required to be eating just the very basic things because there is not enough money for them to pay for, housing and whatever comes with it.
Yeah, and Nili, you were working long hours. I mean, this wasn't just a temporary, a part-time job, especially in your unit and many units.
2 years, 8 months. Yeah. I worked long hours, crazy hours, till midnight sometimes. Yeah. And if I would have been a civilian, I'd get paid for those hours and for all that effort. But there, I just had to do it.